Okay, this video is going to take you through the words program that we did on the first day of methods. And so this is to begin to apply Java terminology to the methods. And remember that the purpose for learning this terminology, vocabulary, if you will, is so that when we communicate, there's understanding. So if I use terms that are specific to Java, it's important you understand those terms so you know what I'm talking about. Also, this gives you a way to communicate, to articulate more accurately, more effectively concepts about methods and so forth. So this is very important to learn these terms. So the first thing is we look at is that when we did the talent show program, and what I want to do is I want to relate this to the talent show program, because when I help you, if you have questions throughout the rest of this chapter, or as I'm speaking during other lessons in this chapter, I'm going to refer back to the talent show program because I think it's a good way to relate to methods. And so one of the questions I asked you, well, who started this program? And it was the MC. And then I asked you, well, then what line of code is associated with that, with the MC starting the program? And we said it was the main method header. And so what I was hoping is you would catch on to that. And so as you can see then, the main method header is up here, so now I missed that. And so this automatically starts the program. So you're going to have many methods. You could have several methods in a program, but one of them has to be the main method. The main method, without the main method, it would be like going out to start your car without having a key available. And so the main method always starts the program. And you notice I have this highlighted in green for go. And so this is what starts the program. Now, we've been using the term method all along. Now, what is a method? And let's just clarify that at this time. A method is a block of code. This is something that you need to be writing on the paper that you were supposed to get out for writing notes. A method is a block of code. When we're very familiar with blocks of code, that performs a series of tasks. Right? And we've used blocks of code for if clauses, else clauses, loop bodies, etc. And so now we're going to, and also we've all used the term main method, but now we're going to attach the block of code idea to it if we haven't already. And so basically this block of code starts, so here's the start of the main method, and then it ends right here. And while I'm down here, this right here, this curly brace, is associated with the starting of the class. Now, so what this is saying is that this is the end of the class, but this is misplaced. And so actually I didn't catch this, but another student caught this for me. So this needs to be at the very end. Okay, so this ending class brace has to be at the very end. Otherwise, this method and this method will not be read by the compiler. These methods have to be within the boundaries of the class. And so that is, I don't know how that happened. I kind of have an idea, but this curly brace, ending class brace, must be at the very end. And so the main method, this is the main method. Now, remember, we called this was like the MC of a talent show program. So that means that the MC is going, in this case, is going to print apple, and then print boat, and then it's going to execute this line, and then it's going to print hamster. It's going to execute this line, and then it's going to print zoo. And then, as we asked at the end, when do we know that the main method, or the MC, is done, and that's this curly brace, the ending curly brace for the main method. And we also said that once this main method is done, the talent show program is done. So when this main method is done, the program, this program named words, is done. And so these right here, this is all the things that the main method is actually going to do. And so this is the series of tasks that will be accomplished by the main method. Now, when you're tracing code, you basically, the general idea is you trace it or read it like a book, where you go to the next line down, next line down. Now, so the next line down is this. So the first thing you should have in your output is apple. And then the main method is going to print boat. And then we go the next line down, and we have now a different kind of line that's going to cause us to go somewhere else in the program and keep us from going to the next line down. So, and this particular line is called a method call. So this is called a method call. And this is important to be able to recognize a method call, because this is a key landmark as you're tracing and writing code. So this method call is, this means, of course, that if you look at the name, it's calling a method. Now, who's doing the calling? The important thing here is that the main method we talked about earlier, that these are the lines of code, these are the series of tasks accomplished by the main method. It's in that block of code. It's in the body of the main method. And so the main method, we say, is the calling method. It's the one that's calling another method. The method that's being called has the name SillySuite. And so what we want to do on your notes is, let's take a look at, I think we already did this definition of a method. I hope we did. Is a method call. The method call is, this is how it looks. It has the name of the method. It's got parentheses, and it's got a semicolon. That's how it's going to always look. Now, there is one thing about this, is that inside the parentheses, and that's one of the ways to identify a method, is when you have the name of the object and then you have parentheses following. For instance, system.out.println has parentheses following, so it's the println method. And so this is going to have, this sometimes is going to have some data in the parentheses. And so this is the general, this is the basic template of a method call, but just know that sometimes it will have some things which we'll call later arguments inside the parentheses. And the important thing here is that it has the name of the method being called. And remember, what we did in our, let's see if I can pull that up, in here is we asked the question, well, how do you know who's going to, or how do we know where to go after the line of code that says, Christy, you are up? Okay, we said this, and this, of course, is relating to the method call. Okay, so it says, is asking Christy Parker to come up first. How did we know where to go? What was logical? Well, we went up here and we saw that, well, Christy, it's her performance. So we were connecting the name of the performer with the name of up here, the kind of the title of their performance. And that is the critical way to know how to navigate through code using methods, is that you connect the names, the name of the method. And so we will go back to here. And so here's the method call, and now it's calling. The main method is calling because all of these are things that the main method is doing, and it's calling this method. And so the next place that the compiler goes to is this method, and so we're connecting silly sweet with silly sweet, and that's the critical issue. And so now we have what's called a method header or a method declaration. So this line of code is called a method header or a method declaration. So the method is being declared, much like a variable is being declared, has been declared. And so as we look at a method header, we want to write the following on our notes. Boy, this is not working out correctly. Right here. So method header is going to look like this. And so it's got and that's also called a declaration. It's got these first two words here are called access specifiers. Now, we are not going to really delve into what that means exactly because of time, but these two words are called access specifiers. Now, this can be private instead of public, and this can be non-static instead of static. And so those, if you continue on in computer science here at Xavier, you'll learn more about what these mean and how they relate to your programs. But at this time, it's not really necessary. The other thing is that void is called this is actually a return type. And notice the word type. That means instead of void, it could be int, it might be double, it could be string. All those are words, because they're data types, all those could go here instead. So it could say public static int. And then, of course, the very important method name, which is what we emphasized when we talked about the program, the talent show program, is that Christy knew to go up because her name was mentioned, and then we knew where to go in the list of things that were happening in the talent show program because we went to where her name was, and so that's important. And then you got your parentheses here and no semicolon for the method header. All right, so that's how that works. Now, if we look back at our code here, one of the questions that's been brought up in our previous classes is that how does the compiler know where to go on the after a method call? What if these were ordered differently? What if these methods here were before? Does it matter whether they're before or after the main method? That kind of thing. Well, it doesn't really matter because all of these methods here, it doesn't matter what order they come in. They just cannot be within the main method. They can't be within the body of the main method, so they can't be in here. But the reason why they're connected is because of what we talked about earlier, is their names. The name of the method is what connects and what tells the compiler where to go next. So it doesn't matter whether they're above or below the main method. Okay, as we go on then, now this method here is going to have, now remember we said a method was a block of code, which is what this is, that it has a series of tasks that are performed by the method. And so the silly sweet method then is going to now print dog and then print forest. And then now we come to the interesting thing, where a place where some students get lost. And that is, now we're at the end of the method. And so some students go, well, I don't know where to go. Well, it's very easy. At the end of the method, which is signified by the curly brace at the end. And before I do that, I did forget one thing. We did want to mention the word method body. And so the body of the method is, of course, within, in between these curly braces. And so it's called a method body. Now, it seems like I had some notes for this. Maybe not. Yes, I did. Okay, so the method body is a block of code between a set of curly braces. It contains the series of tasks that are performed. So it's kind of like, if you keep in mind on this when you're dealing with methods, that it's like a talent show where you have an MC, the main method, who is directing traffic. Sometimes the main method does things, sometimes the MC says things or does things, and other times it calls for other people to do things. And that's exactly what the main method does. Is it calls on other methods to perform. And that way, the main method body doesn't get stuffed with everything that's going on in the program. And so it makes it easier for it's really a lot for the programmer, because it makes it easier for the programmer to edit the program. And so for example here, if you're having to edit the part where it's dealing with, the lamp or a lumpy loot kind of thing, well, this, instead of being stuffed inside the memory or the main method, it has its own section, which is going to make it easier to find and then make your editing. Of course, this is very simple, so you're going to go, well, what would we need to do? Enter here or edit here. But in a more complicated program, that's very much more important, that you can find sections of code for editing purposes. Okay, so here we are. Here's the method body. So once it's done doing the series of tasks, printing dog and force, now it's at the end of the method. And so the thing to remember, end of method, return to method call. Okay, just like we used to say, end of method, return to while. This is a statement to memorize. End of method, return to method call. And so if we were to now look at so just a little bit of notes here, I believe. When the method is done, what's next? This should not be a problem. It's very simple. Return to its method call. So whatever called that method is where you go. Now, by the way, we do use terms like called method and the calling method. The main method is the one that called silly sweet. It did the calling. And then silly sweet is the called method, C-A-L-L-E-D. So the called method. Now it says end of method, return to method call. So we go back to the method call. Now remember what we did, and just so we relate this, remember that in here I asked you, what's common about the location of each of these lines of code that follow the end of these performances? So when Christy was done, logically, it went thank you, Christy. And then when Dale was done, it went logically thank you, Dale, and then thank you, Sally. So these were the lines of code where the compiler would go to after that the person was finished performing. Now notice, they are right below where they were called up to perform. Christy, you're up. I need Dale to come up. I need Sally to come up. And so this is kind of a logical order, and that's what's happening in this Java program. It's all very logical. And so as we then look at this, what we're going to say, now we're not going to actually go to the line of code right below. We want to get in the habit of returning to the line that has the method call on it. And the reason why is because eventually there will be something else the compiler will do after returning to the method call. So the compiler will hit the method call originally and go to the method. It will accomplish the steps, and then it'll return back to the exact same line that contains the method call. And then sometimes then it will have something to do before moving on. But at this point, that's what we're nothing to do, so we'll go on to the next line. And then the main method prints hamster. And then it calls on lumpy loot to do its thing. And so it goes here as we've done before, and then lumpy loot does this task. It prints lamp, return to method call, go to wacky waters, the next line down. Wacky waters, a method call. So this invokes the wacky water method, which I believe is up here somewhere, and then the wacky water prints Mago and pale. It's done. Now it returns to the method call, and then we go down to zoo, or not, to print zoo. So the main method prints zoo. So, and then we ask, well, how do we know when the MC is done or when the main method is done? And that is, of course, the last line of code in the main method. And then this, of course, signifies the main method's done, this brace. And so we know that the program is done. So as you do the 5-2 assignment, make sure that you read all the directions carefully, because it's going to tell you certain methods that do certain things. And so it's important that you understand that silly suite, what it does is contained within the silly suite method. What the main method does is within the body of the main method. What lumpy loot does is within the body of the lumpy loot method. So that's how it goes. You should be ready to do 5-2 at this time.